All right, back with another off the radar interview. Today I am joined by a super heavyweight karate champ, an actor, and a WCW legend. Now, this WCW legend is known for having one of the best ring entrances of all time. I'm, of course, talking about none other than Ray Lloyd, aka Glacier. So, with that all being said, Ray Lloyd, how the heck are ya?
Oh, Nick, I'm doing great, man. I'm down here in Orlando, Florida, sunny Orlando, Florida. Our landscaping people are making a little run over here in the neighborhood, so I apologize if you hear the mowers in the background. But,
No problem.
But yeah, it's going good. We had some heavy rain last night, but as it is in Florida, 12 hours later, it looks beautiful.
Excellent. Good to hear. I appreciate you giving me some time today. Very appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. So, Ray, we're going to jump into your wrestling career, but I want to know what Ray Lloyd is up to in 2020.
Well, I'd say, Nick, like a lot of people, this first half of the year has been pretty tough, for personally and professionally for everybody. But
Sure.
One of the things that, of course, you and I talking the other day before we decided to lock down the day and date to do this, I was explaining some of the things to you that really the last 5, 6 years of what I've been doing, I've still been out on the convention circuits and doing wrestling appearances, still wrestling some. I'm getting to that point where my ring appearances are less and less because Father Time stops for no one. So
Right.
Luther came up with this idea to kind of make our own version of maybe like the movie like The Wild Bunch or The Magnificent Seven. And for me, it was always The Magnificent Seven because of that movie is a story that's been told throughout the ages. There was a real famous director named Kurosawa who made this movie called The Seven Samurai. And
Okay.
The Seven Samurai was where the Magnificent Seven got the idea for. And then, of course, there was a remake of The Magnificent Seven a few years ago with Denzel Washington, Chris Pratt, a lot of amazing actors. And so we started getting serious about it about 5, 6 years ago. And, to kind of long story short, we finally got the script written. We just campaigned, brought our best friends together. We were able to get it funded. It's a SAG film, which for people who don't know what that means in the industry, it was a union film. It was done right. We were able to use the best working actors that we could find out there.
Okay.
Professional working actors, and there's some great named actors in our film. But yeah, it's something it's my heart and soul. I'm so proud of it because
Wow.
it's an action adventure film with a little bit of a sci-fi element to it, a very family-friendly film with a lot of familiar faces, young and old, from the wrestling world, and a film that's just done right in our opinion because it's the story carries the film.
Okay, so the movie you're expecting to be out the beginning of next year, 2021. Can you share with us some of the wrestlers that are in the movie with you that we might know?
Yeah. And we have a website for the film. Diamond Dallas Page is another one of my great friends. Anybody knows me
Huge
knows
star.
Dallas and I are super tight. But Dallas, his IT guy that does all of his web stuff and everything for his DDP yoga and everything.
Yeah.
There's another friend of mine named Robert McLaren. And as a gift to the project, Robert did our website for us. So it's up and running. The website is the film is called The Replaceables. For now, obviously it's a working title. Might change before distribution. But we're going to hold tight on that for right now. But it's the replaceablesmovie.com. And it's just the Replaceables with an S movie.com.
Gotcha.
And maybe you can put a link up.
I'll put the link in the under the video in the description, definitely.
And it's you'll see everybody who's in it. But I can do a quick rundown of everybody. It's as far as the wrestlers go. There's several Hall of Fame wrestlers like DDP, Diamond Dallas Page. Of course, the living legend Larry Zbyszko has a great role.
Okay.
My former tag team partner, still really great friend, 3-time world karate champ Ernest Miller has a great role. Who also, the people that watch the movie The Wrestler, they know that Ernest was Mickey Rourke's nemesis in The Wrestler.
Definitely.
And played the Ayatollah. And then my buddy Luther Biggs plays a great role. We have Gangrel. David Heath makes an amazing appearance in the film. Really kind of steals the show in the scenes he's in.
Gangrel does. David Heath.
And big Ron Reese.
Ron Studd.
He was a part of the Flock back in the day.
Ron Studd from WCW. Ron Reese. Okay.
He makes a great appearance. And then there's some other wrestlers in there that make appearances. I'll save some for the surprises for the film, but
Okay.
probably the one that I know me and Luther were most excited about to get for the film is just literally probably one of the most legendary wrestlers in the history of our business over the last 40 years is, wrestled in WWF as King Haku. And when we got to know him in WCW as Ming, he wrestled with the Faces of Fear. And it's Tonga Fafita. And Tonga is just, all the legendary stories you can just YouTube him. But and he is that guy. But this movie shows another side of him, the side about how much he is about family, how that he could be that kind, tender-hearted person. There's that side as well that we wanted to make sure we could show in the movie, because we know no one else was ever going to show that side.
Sure.
And like Larry Zbyszko, his character has a great scene with my character where he talks about why he comes together to go on this loop with these wrestlers. And because his wife has passed away recently, he doesn't feel like he really knows where his place is in life anymore. So he comes on the loop with us because of the camaraderie. He needs to be around those guys to have that strength to kind of keep going. So everybody has their reason for coming on this journey together. And it's a great thing because it's like a lot of these characters are portrayed as guys who are past their prime, but they're still stars. That's why they still get out there. And so when they get put in a situation of helping these people who they don't even really know, they do it because of who they are, because they're good people. And that's part of the story that we really want to resonate is, there's a bunch of tough wrestlers that they might curse a little and drink a little bit of beer, but at the end of the day, they're great guys, and they would literally give you the shirt off your back if you needed it. And so that's the part that we think, people won't expect to see. And trust me, you and I talked about this the other day. When you say pro wrestlers versus aliens, we already know the bar expectations is down here. But that's good. We want that to work to our advantage because we know the movie that we made. I've seen the first rough cut. It's even better than we hoped. And then we're nowhere near the finished product. I'm telling you, it is. It's something we're going to be very, very proud of. And it's a movie that it paints pro wrestling and the pro wrestling industry, and especially the pro wrestling fans, in a really good light. And it's something that pro wrestling fans can really, really be proud of. And someone who's maybe that journeyman wrestler who, his buddies don't get why he does it, can sit his buddies down and watch this and say, this is why I love doing what I do. And because of how we present ourselves in the film.
Excellent. I cannot wait to check that out. I'm sure a lot of wrestling fans will do that. Again, beginning of next year, we're hoping to see that movie. But let's jump into your wrestling career. So. Yeah. So he starts laughing. Okay. So there was 2 runs. Tell me about your first run, Sugar Ray Lloyd in 1989.
Actually, it started in 1987. I broke in April of '87, and actually I played football at Valdosta State University in Valdosta, Georgia. Who we started the program. I was the first year in '82. And we did really good. I redshirted 1 year, and in my senior year, we went 9-2. We were battling for the national title. Valdosta State has gone on to be a perennial national champion since then, which I'm so proud of that I helped lay that foundation. A lot of good pro players came out of that program and still do. But we were there. There was a local TV station that actually taped the local wrestling show on Saturday mornings live. And so me and a few other football players and baseball players would go down there and watch and act like complete idiots in the audience, because we were in college. And through that, I met a couple of wrestlers, and one being a gentleman named Fred Avery, who wrestled as Easy Rider Ruckus, and he looked like it. He was big, 330-pound, big, burly biker-looking guy. I would find out later, very, very nice, educated man, very good amateur wrestler, which you wouldn't think, So as football and our senior year was winding down, one of my best buddies who played, I played center, he played guard, and we hung out together. I mean, did everything together because we were teammates. He basically encouraged us to break in with him, train us to train at his ring in his backyard, which I can say is probably still the hardest ring I've ever been in after 30-something years. But the thing about that back then was, there weren't wrestling schools out there like there are now. It was a very closed business. This was before the internet, and it was a very well-protected business. And when you watch those guys on Saturday Night TV, for me on TBS, and I watched Georgia Championship Wrestling from Florida, that's where I came to idolize Dusty as a kid, Dusty Rhodes. And to me, I mean, I believe those guys were all legitimately tough guys.
Sure.
And so when Fred started trying to recruit us to do this, and my first reaction was, heck no, I can't do that, man. I'm not that tough. And thank God he kept urging us on to do it. And RD, my buddy, always kind of wanted to do it, but so eventually, April of '87, we're getting ready to graduate college. We start training, and I'm telling you, I just went through Valdosta a few weeks ago, and even in April, it is unbelievably stifling hot and humid there. So training outside, every afternoon for 5 months was, at that time it was just youth that kept us going because we would just get exhausted. And like I said, unbeknownst to us, Fred was a very good amateur wrestler, so he put us through the ringer. And so, but he kind of fast forward back then. You were kind of, if you had any kind of potential. Luckily, I think RD and I did. And we got to admit, we're coming right out of college football at a high level. We were both in good shape and young and and fiery. We wanted it. Once I had committed, I was like, this is what I want to do. I mean, I knew like after probably the third or fourth day of training, I remember sitting on the edge of the ring, and I remember saying to myself, I don't know if I'm going to be good at this, but I have found what makes me come alive. And I thought it was football up to that point.
Okay.
So the timing for me couldn't have been more perfect. But I broke in '87. We started working pretty quickly with Peach State Championship Wrestling, which was owned by a wonderful guy, Ben Masters, who's still a good friend of mine. And Ben brought in all the guys that were not under contract. He was cycled them in, like Wildfire Tommy Rich, Mr. Wrestling #2, God rest his soul, just passed, and who became a great mentor to me and RD. Bullet Bob Armstrong, Ted and Jerry Oates, especially those guys that were those regional stars, but also the big stars like he'd bring in Big Boss Man and Abdul the Butcher, all those. And
definitely.
But Tommy Rich took a liking to me, and so I drive Tommy from town to town, and Tommy'd sit over there and just drink his beer, but then kind of like you were always told back in the day is one of the things you do is you drive the veterans around, and a lot of your education will come from driving them around and just listening to them educate you in the car, and telling the stories and sharing the secrets of the business that you're learning as you go, kind of on the job training. But he's the one. He called me one day and he goes, "You need a name, you need a catchy a nickname." And I was like, all right. What? He goes, Sugar Ray Lloyd. And this is back when Sugar Ray Leonard was still boxing, and I was like, somebody kind of already has that,
Right. Perhaps you've heard of him.
And he of course, I was a huge fan of Sugar Ray Leonard. And he said, you'll be the first white guy named Sugar Ray Leonard. I'm Sugar Ray Lloyd. And I was like, okay.
If you say so.
Whatever, and I think more of what he really meant was, you'll be the only guy in wrestling, and there was no one called that, so why not? And everybody in sports steals nicknames from everybody. So, Sugar Ray Leonard, I'm sure, there was Sugar Ray Robinson before him, So, and from that day, I was kind of dawned by, Tommy Rich that it was going to be Sugar Ray Lloyd, and it stuck. And I'll tell you this:
it's catchy.
This is what's kind of cool about the wrestling business and being in it for as long as I have. Is when I used to be the young guy, noticing the things that were said between the older veterans. Now I'm the older veteran, and like when I run into Scott Armstrong, Steve Armstrong, Bullet Armstrong, all those guys that I came up as Sugar Ray Lloyd, they still call me Sugar Ray. They've never called me. Yeah, because that's just how they knew me, from the beginning. And it's very sentimental to me when they do that, because it reminds me that these guys who were so good at what they did took the time to really help a guy like me who just wanted to learn, and I'm still a student of the game. I tell you, I mean, if I go to a wrestling seminar, there's one thing, there's not a lot of guarantees in this world, but I will guarantee you, I don't care if there's 40, 50 people at that seminar, there's a really good chance that I will take more notes than anybody there. And that's just the teacher in me, I guess,
Awesome.
Or the student, but it's just, I have a philosophy, a short pencil is better than a long memory. You may think you'll remember it, but you won't. Right.
I mean, that's probably why you're such a good teacher too, so.
I hope that's part of it. I really do. I mean, and it's in my heart to teach and share, because I've been so fortunate over these 33 years to have some great mentors. The first one I had was actually Fred Avery. He's still a great friend of mine. Getting ready to open up a wrestling school. He became a teacher and coach, and he lives over on the North Florida, over near close to Jacksonville. He's going to start a wrestling school after we get through all the chaos of the pandemic stuff. And I'll be bouncing back and forth to help him, just because I mean, it's like a moral obligation to me. I mean, he did so much to help me. I mean, that's the very least I can do.
Okay. So talking about Dusty, now what would you say the most important thing you learned from him was? I know there was a number of things. What would you say the first or most important thing that really stuck with you?
It's funny. I was just sitting with a buddy last night, and I told him this story, is that his unbelievable level of confidence, self-confidence in himself. He told me one time, this was the time when Turnbuckle was, we did great out of the gates. There was a period where, shows weren't pulling as much as we would hope they would. And he was kind of having to be a little tighter on how he was spending the money and everything. And he said, I went to his home office and we were sitting there, and I said, we good, Dream? I mean, I was calling Dream. I said, we're good though, right? We're still going to push forward, right? And he goes, yeah. He goes, we're good. He goes, okay. He goes, we'll get back to where we need to be. And I said, you think so? And he just leaned over, looked at me, put his elbows on the desk, and he said, Raymond, he said, I can tell you one thing right now. He said, I've always been the kind of man that I believe if I had to get up tomorrow morning, put my feet on the floor and go find a way to get $1 million, I could do it. And I believed him. The
Sure.
ways I just believed him. His level of self-confidence.
Because of his confidence, yeah.
Yeah, and that was just, and whenever he carried himself, he always carried himself. A lot of people might have looked at that as being a little bit of cockiness, and probably there was a little bit of cockiness there. But to me, I always saw it as confidence, and that to me is why he was such a huge draw, even early in his career, even as when he was a heel, going as a bad guy back when him and Dick Murdoch tagged the game together, and they were the Outlaws and all. I mean, you wanted to pay to go see him because he just had that magnetism that made people want to buy a ticket.
All right, so Ray, you had this incredible push when you started as Glacier. Of course, you had the incredible entrance. Did you notice any veteran wrestlers giving you type of attitude, any issues because you had this great treatment and maybe they thought they deserved it themselves?
You know what? I mean, if there was, I never noticed it. I think what was probably more of the atmosphere was more of everybody kind of waiting to kind of figure this out too, because it had never really been done. And, and years later, the funny thing is well, not even years later, it was maybe, I don't know, a year into it, maybe, and I was talking to Dallas some about it, and we were kind of on the back end of that first year, and I was like, man, this actually, seemed to be pretty well received among the boys, and stuff, and Dallas said something to me, which has always, meant a lot to me. Is he said, I knew at the time, just based on your personality, your demeanor, I knew the way you would handle yourself in the locker room that you were the guy for this, that maybe some other guy would have been in that role and it might have come across totally different, and someone might have gotten a lot more heat for it. But it was, he credited a lot of with just my personality, my demeanor. I tried, very, very hard my whole life to work hard, but still be humble, and I think that really, really showed, during that first year, especially those first few months of all that.
Gotcha. Yeah, it seemed like a real nice, modest, hardworking guy. So I think that portrays very well. So it's hard to not like somebody that comes across that way.
Yeah, and that's just once again I go back to the older I get, the more I realize how truly, truly fortunate I was to have great parents, to raise me right and to to treat everybody with respect, and that's one of the first things that one of the main lessons I learned from that environment, because I was just talking to a wrestling fan yesterday about. He was like, well, how because everybody always asks the same question. Are you guys all friends? And I'm like, well, not really. I mean, it's kind of like any other work environment. You have the people you really love to hang out with. You have the people that you are kind of armchair, relationship. I mean, arm's distance relationships with. Then you have the people that maybe you don't gel so well with. But
right.
That's kind of every work environment. So, but I always felt like I once again, I give Dallas a lot of credit. Dallas was Dallas is maybe more driven than anybody I've ever known. But Dallas was just convinced on staying positive, and you probably, if everybody's listening to anything Dallas has ever said over the years, and trust me, he walks the walk. He talks about life being 90% of how you react to everything. And
yeah.
And I just remember him telling me one time, and I told him, I said, well, do you mind if I adopt that saying? He's like, no, go right ahead. You know, he's like, give me credit when you can. So I'm giving him credit.
Right.
But you know, he always said, he's like, bro, like, you know, because this when I was getting some of the negative um, reviews at first, you know, because you know, like I said, it was a dramatic, hard left-hand turn in wrestling, and this had never been done before. You know, a lot of people didn't know how to deal with it, and heck, I mean, I didn't either. Like I said, I was a traditional trunks and boots guy myself, so this was a big change for me personally, and I was scared to death whether it was going to be received well or not. But every time that you know there would be a negative review about it, Dallas would always say, "Look, life's 10% of what happens, 90% of how you react to it." And he said, you're not ever going to be able to control what always comes your way. He goes, but you can always control how you react to it. And that's what people will see is how you react to it. And I've always remembered that. And what I've learned most of the time, the best reaction is keep your mouth shut.
Right? Sometimes less is more.
On. Yeah, we'll move on because in this world, especially these days, you know, that was in the infancy of social media, but even then it applied. But even more so now is that, you know, I mean, there's so much, God, right now, especially in wrestling, there's so much tension, controversy over, you know, so many things. And granted, I mean, it's all sad to see and hear, but it's all things that really need to be addressed, you know. But of course, you have your people that are very brave behind the keyboard, you know, and there are a lot of critics of wrestling or whatever, and I've learned through life, you know, the only way you give a critic credibility is to respond, and so. You know, and that's what some people are, you know, the trolls, if you want to call them out, they're just they're just prodding to see if they get a reaction out of you. And so the best revenge, if you want to call it, to dealing with a lot of that is just not respond. And what I've learned is literally 15 minutes later, there's so much news going around this world, they'll forget all about you and they'll go start talking bad about something else.
Absolutely. Heck yeah. Yep.
So yeah, and I really believe in you know, I don't know if, you know, people will use the word karma or whatever. I don't know if that's necessarily the word I use, but I just feel like, you know, you put good stuff out to the world, and I really believe not because you want it to come back to you, but I really feel in certain ways it does come back to you, you know.
Definitely.
And good things bad things still happen to good people, but you know, but still, I really believe if you lead your life, you know, like going to that, you know, the glass half full philosophy, that you know, you end up, you know, a lot of good things cross your path, you know, and things that you wouldn't expect. And I think really appreciating the little things in life, learning to appreciate the little things, you know, is a big part of just learn to be happy in this world, you know, and that's what I was taught a long time ago. And the older I get, the more and more I realize that is really true. It's not necessarily about the materialistic things. If you like that stuff, that's great, but that's really not going to make anybody happy. I think most of us know that by now, but
right.
It's, what do you do to help, you know, the other person, you know, and what do you do to help someone who maybe needs a helping hand, doesn't even realize they do, and you do something with no expectation in return of what you might get from it. And you know, and you just, I tell you what, man, the greatest thing in the world for me is and that's why I always say that, you know, wrestling fans are so much the most valuable part of what we do, because I live to put a smile on wrestling fans' faces. You know, I just do. And it's something that God's given me a talent to do what I do, and has blessed me with a personality, I think, that fits well for this business. But I was a fan too. I'm still a fan of wrestling. You know, I mean, when I get around certain legendary wrestlers who I, you know, really look up to. I mean, even though I'm a peer now, it's still a pretty cool moment for me. You know, so
Absolutely.
I enjoy those moments. I don't, you know, I don't shrug that off as you know, whatever. I'm one of the guys now. No, I mean, I still allow myself to be a fan too. So you know, I get it. I mean, I love being able to do what I do, and seeing smiles on people's faces is just better than any payday I could ever receive.
Excellent. That's good to hear. You can definitely tell that just by your performances and talking to you and everything. So that's for sure. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry. So we talked a little bit about your tag team with Ernest the Cat Miller. Now, you guys had a number of matches against Megan the Barbarian, the Faces of Fear. So what I want to know is, can you confirm, are Megan the Barbarian as tough as everybody says, and are they as nice as everybody says?
Yes and yes. You know, I'll answer the obvious first. Yeah. I mean, Ming and Barb, and you know, the great thing about me and Ernest coming from the martial arts world, you know, you learn how to give respect where respect is due. And these guys were not only legends in the wrestling business, but they were our elders. You know, they were also martial artists. So, you know, we just clicked from the very first moment we met. Ming and I, you know, Tonga Fafita and I have become like family, literally. And he lives close to me here in Central Florida. But yeah, in the ring, you know, business is business, and they're gonna crash into you like they do anybody else,
Right.
And I'm telling you, speaking from experience, we had many matches, us, on Nitro, on Thunder, on Saturday night, and they literally are as tough as everybody says. They literally are that tough. I mean, I can tell you. I mean, I've been around a lot of tough people in my life. Played college ball against a lot of guys who went on to play at the NFL, and I'm just telling you, they're at a level, especially, you know, Tonga. I mean, man, everybody's heard the stories.
Oh yeah.
And Barb's right up there with him too, But the other side of that is they literally are the kindest, most giving people that think I've ever met. And you hear people say all the time, "Oh, they literally give you the shirt off their back." I'm telling you, these two men literally would. I mean, if they like you, they love you, and if they love you, you're family. And that's not something they throw around lightly. A lot of people say that. If they tell you that, they mean it. And I'll give you a perfect example. I had hip replacement surgery 5.5 years ago,
Okay.
and I had surgery on December 15th. And at that time, my mom was still alive, lived in Atlanta, and my brother was up in the Atlanta area, and I wasn't going to be able to travel for Christmas because obviously I was still laid up from getting this brand new hip. And on Christmas Eve, Tonga sent his cousin, who actually lived in my neighborhood. He sent him to pick me up and drove me all the way over to where they were, which is about almost an hour away, to have Christmas Eve dinner with his family.
Wow.
And it meant, to this day, it still, I mean, means so much to me, and that's just the kind of men they are, and that's the stuff that, I know we got a chance, we talked earlier a little bit about the film, but that's one of the things that my buddy Luther Biggs and I, in the feature film, the Replaceables, that features all the wrestlers, that was a big thing that we wanted to make sure we told in this story, and we really did hit our mark. Now that we've seen the first rough cut of the film, is him and Larry Zbyszko, two legendary wrestlers, but tough guys that you wouldn't expect to see a tender side of these guys. And yes, you get to see the tough side of them in the movie, but you get to see a tender side of them too that nobody's going to be expecting. And I'm telling you, their performances, they hit it out of the park. I mean, they really, really did an amazing job. But yeah, to not have to keep the story short is yeah, they're the two of the toughest guys that walk the earth, and they're two of the nicest and most biggest hearts on the earth too.
Excellent. So that's a true story then. So we'll get back into your we'll get back into your streak. So you were undefeated for over a year. Your streak came to an end against Buff Bagwell. I have no issue with that opponent being the one that ended your streak. But do you feel that maybe WCW dropped the ball? Again, you were undefeated. So was Goldberg. Could they maybe have highlighted you two at a pay-per-view or just did a better job with that?
I mean, obviously hindsight is, like we always say, 2020. It makes perfect sense that they should have, I mean, even if obviously Bill was on, as they say, a meteoric rise at that time. And that's something that nobody could predict, I mean, look at how many other big, super athletic people they put out there, and it didn't ever work. Bill just had that something that, as we say in wrestling, if you can be authentic and to connect with the crowd, then you got a really, really good chance. And Bill was authentic. I mean, Dallas and I used to always joke that Bill's one of the nicest guys you ever want to meet. He really is. But he can become that guy, that super intense guy. And we always used to say, and we say whenever Bill goes out in front of the cameras, nobody believes Bill Goldberg more than Bill Goldberg. I mean, he's and you can look and see that's not an act. It's not manufactured. I mean, he's really gone to that place in his head to where he's in that mode of he's going to do business. He's going to go out there and he's going to give 100% every ounce of what he has. He's not going to leave anything to chance, so to speak. But yeah, and Bagwell and I, like I've said many times, I love Marcus. We started off pretty much at the same time, came up through the ranks in Georgia on a lot of the same promotions. Obviously, he got his break a few years before I did with WCW, but yeah, during that time, it was like one of those things that even Mark and I were kind of looking at each other like. Even Mark comes up and said, this, it doesn't really make sense unless we weren't told there was going to be anything afterwards. Because what would have been great if that's what they wanted to do was, okay, well, we got tons of live TV to to write every, at least 5 hours a week to try and write. Why not make it, a 3-match series or a 5-match series, something like that, to where, we could just get some mileage out of it. And Buff was in the NWO, so it would certainly make sense that probably he wins the series, But let's get some mileage out of it. And there was never any explanation. There was never any reason like, oh, okay, well, it's time for you to, let's hang that first loss on you. Never. And but once again, this is one of those reasons why I go back and say, there are a lot of things you can look at and say why WCW maybe started to fall apart. And I can say from firsthand experience watching, Monday Nitro, and like I said, I think earlier was, when you give wrestlers creative control of their career, what they can do and not do, that's like the worst possible thing you can do, because now, those guys have an opportunity to veto anything you come up with. And you spent the whole week before writing this show out, and all of a sudden, hours before they go, not doing that. And they have the power to say that. Now all of a sudden you're scrambling to try to write something. You can't, it's not, the quality's going to suffer of the show. Right. And everybody saw that that's what started to happen. And I'm not pointing fingers at anybody. I mean, everybody's, talked about that stuff and who had creative power. Right. I mean, that's certainly not for this podcast, but I saw it firsthand, and it was sad, because I think a lot of it didn't necessarily need to happen. But also, I get it. I mean, guys, our job is always to take care of number one, and you're out there and you're in a very vicious dog eat dog business. And so a lot of times, if I would have had that power, I guarantee I would have vetoed some certain things they would have written for me to do.
Sure. Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm a big Buff Bagwell fan. It just seems like they could have did a better job for both of you guys. And even if you were going to take your streak away, they could have did something with it, or even just talk about it a little bit more. Like I said,
and like I said, Buff and I, like I said, we've been friends for, almost as long as we've been wrestling, and and that's the thing too. I think because Buff and I had come up, kind of through the ranks together, I would have loved, and I'm quite sure he'd say the same thing. I would have loved for us to have maybe, like I said, a 3-5 match, kind of series there. I think the fans would have enjoyed it too, because I knew for a fact he and I had certainly had enough in our arsenal to come up with we could have had 3 to 5 really great matches that would have been totally different matches, But once again, we were constantly, especially me and Kanyon, we're constantly pitching ideas to them. Sometimes they listened. Sometimes it seemed like it was talking to a brick wall.
Sure. I hear you. All right, so Ray, I'm going to put you on the spot. What was more of an impressive streak? Your undefeated streak as Glacier, or Ray Lloyd's undefeated streak in the World Karate Association?
To answer that, I think that both obviously were big parts of my life, big chapters of my life. But just for the people who may not know, and when I played college football at Valdosta State University from '82 through '85, I actually through '87, I actually I played 5 years, because I redshirted my first year due to an injury. So I had 5 years to play, which ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me, if you can imagine injury being a good thing, because by the time I hit that 5th year, I really had developed into the player that I felt I would really have peaked as far as college football player for me. But in the off season, I ended up I'd go to a lot of karate tournaments and stuff around the area, because I was still very involved in martial arts. A couple of the guys that I played ball were involved in it, so we would kind of, it's a birds of a feather. We would all go check out the tournaments and stuff. And met a gentleman named Bruce Edwards, and him and his father were trainers, and started talking. And he was like, "Hey, this is what I'm training fighters, and I think you could do pretty good at this." And long story short, I ended up training, started fighting for the World Karate Association as an amateur, but still. It was a very high level, because kickboxing was full contact karate was very popular in the '80s, and it was on ESPN and stuff like that, and so it was a great way for me to stay in shape. But the other thing was I was staying in pretty darn good shape because of the strength and conditioning coaches at my college football program. So year round, I stayed in great shape. And so Bruce loved that, because a lot of the other super heavyweights that he worked with, they were big burly guys, but they didn't necessarily want to train that much, and so that actually ended up being my advantage. Was he would always say, I'd fight mostly 5 to 7 round fights, and he would say, just get past the 3rd round and you got them, because by the 3rd round, most of them would be too worn out, and that's really how I racked up most of my wins. But I would say that that it was equally a different challenge. Because when I once again, I was just telling someone this the other day, the reason why I started going to full contact karate is because I'd done the tournaments and all that, and those are, light contact. I wanted to know. I wanted to know because I wasn't some guy who goes out and gets in a lot of street fights. That just was never me. But I wanted to know, could I take a punch? Could I get hit and respond? Because if I was in a street fight, I wanted to know that I had enough confidence that, okay, if I get tagged in a street fight, I can still keep going. And so that was my main goal for doing it, really, which seems kind of an odd reason. But I found out that, yeah, I could. But so I had to prove something to myself was the main reason I did that. And I didn't know. Going in, I had no idea, really. Whereas in wrestling, I always tell aspiring wrestlers, this is not a fair business. And it may take you an awful long time to get your break. It took me 9 years to get my break in WCW. 9 years is a long time for when you start something to actually happening, but by the time I got my break in WCW, I knew I was ready. And I was ready to prove myself to everybody else. I was like, I know I'm good enough. I just got to show everybody else and let them see that I'm good enough. Whereas in full contact karate, I wasn't sure if I was good enough or not. So it was a different path for that reason. But so yeah, I guess the short answer is they were equally challenging, but both very rewarding in different ways as well. Because one, just at the end of the day, I came out, I think, a better overall, well-rounded person because of both of those paths.
Okay. Gotcha. Now, was there any talk in WCW of giving Glacier a title?
You know what? The one thing that I remember Eric saying is that he didn't, and for the most part, I kind of agree with him. Because Eric's thing at that time was like presenting more of a buffet style show. He give the audience, give them like a circus act, give a little bit of everything. And granted, that took a hard turn when NWO got a hit. Right. But, I know that was, so I remember, Eric saying, and not necessarily in a bad way, is, don't worry necessarily. You guys don't worry about titles, because in wrestling, they all say certain people don't necessarily need the title to get over, and that was his goal. And whether we accomplished that or not, is debatable, but his goal was, we have so much other stuff with you guys, with the entrance, with the costumes, with all that we don't necessarily, at least in the beginning, need to worry about you guys trying to push for a title or anything like that. Now, I will say that, once things kind of started to split with me and Ernest and Kanyon and Brian, Wrath going with they didn't seem to know what to do with us after Bash at the Beach, 97, 98 at the pay-per-view where we had an amazing match, and which you would have thought, okay, we've proven that we can get the audience. This is this works. They seem to not know what to do with us after that. But in my opinion, I know that Ernest and I, as well as Kanyon and Brian, could have very well challenged for the tag titles, because I felt like we were equally as good as any other tag team out there, and I thought it would have been kind of cool. But once again, I always say too, one of the biggest lessons I learned from Dusty when I went to work for him and TCW, and eventually he brought me as an agent for Impact Wrestling down when they were in Orlando, was that when you're on the other side as an agent, as a producer, you're having to constantly think big picture. Okay. And when you're a talent, all you're really thinking about is you.
Right.
so when I saw it from the other side, I can understand why those ideas maybe didn't cross their mind, because they're not spending too much time thinking about any one person, other than maybe the biggest draw and whoever that was, Hogan or Piper or Savage at that time, So okay. So they're just trying to I think trying to survive every week and write 5 hours of live TV. Right. So I never. My point is, I never took it personally. I will say, the only title I've held a lot of titles. The one that means the most to me is because I grew up. A lot of people don't know I have a twin brother, and when we grew up watching wrestling in the Jacksonville Coliseum in Jacksonville, Florida, we always we love watching Jack and Jerry Briscoe, and they of course became the NWA World Tag Champs at one point. And I always said, like when I got a chance to meet Gerald Briscoe not too long ago, I told him, I said, like we weren't, in my opinion, there's a say when people always say, what does it mean to be over in wrestling? And my definition of being over in wrestling is when the fans want to be you. They don't want to be like you. They want to be you. They want to be you. And my brother and I wanted to be Jack and Jerry Briscoe. We didn't want to be like them. We wanted to be them, you know? And so it was really cool for me to be able to tell him that story. But that was always my goal, was to, if I was going to hold one title, I wanted to hold the NWA World Tag Team titles. And when I worked for Dusty for Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling, and it's a lengthy story, but I'll just tell you that, you know, back then, even this was in 2001. It was in December 28, 2001. Dusty had gone before the board. Back then, they still did that, and I'm not sure if they still do now. Now with you know, the new owner that has the NWA, but that was a big deal. You had to, you know, basically petition for the title to change hands, and Dusty worked it out to where the titles changed hands, and me and my partner at the time. Won and that we were going to wrestle on a weekend loop, Friday and Saturday. We won the NWA World Tag Team titles on one night, and we lost them the very next night. So I have maybe the shortest run ever as NWA World Tag Team champion. But it's like Dusty told me. He said, Raymond, he said, you told me your goal was to be the NWA Tag Team champions. You didn't say for how long.
Goals accomplished. There we go.
You know what? And I'm in the wrestling almanac for forever and ever. Amen.
Absolutely.
You know?
Sure.
But you know, but I'll tell you, Nick, it's one of my greatest accomplishments in the wrestling business, is because not only because I pursued and captured a lifelong dream, a childhood dream. You know, I did that, and it was a great memory. But what made it just so incredibly special is that Dusty was the one that orchestrated it, and being that Dusty was my childhood hero. I mean, you can't write that stuff, man.
Right. You can't make that stuff up.
That's why it means so much to me. And I have a replica of the title belt, and I'm telling you, every time I look at it, I think of Dusty and what he did to make this kid from South Georgia's dream come true. If only for a little while, but a little while was more than enough. 24 glorious hours I got to be NWA World Tag Team Champion.
You're still talking about it today, so obviously it made an impact.
Am, and I'll probably be talking about it until the day they bury me, you know?
Yeah. All right, so I understand I'm asking a very modest person of this, but is there anything in your career that you would change, any mistakes, or you would just, you know, change this or that? Doesn't necessarily have to be a mistake, I guess. Anything in your career you would change in terms of the Glacier career?
There's one thing, people always say that if you could go back and go back and do it all over again, you know, would you change anything? Heck yeah, there's a couple things I'd change. but I can say the one regret that I have the most, and this is why I when I do a lot of seminars, and of course now with our school in Atlanta, I really hammer this, you know, home to everyone that will listen, is I just encourage them so much to just keep a journal of your journey, because you think you'll remember all of it and you won't. You'll remember just very little bit of it. And one of my mentors told me a long time, you know, short pencil is better than a long memory, you know? And you look at like Chris Jericho as a prime example. Jericho kept a journal. And I think pretty much his first two books that were, you know, top sellers were pretty much just notes from his journal. You know, he recorded his journey. And, you know, I always say, and I got this quote from Gangrel just a few months ago, actually, as he said, you know, that the great Malenko, who trained him, would always say, you know, the journey is the jewel, you know, and everybody's looking for that big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but you're actually, you know, you pick up the pieces of gold, so to speak, along the journey. You know, that's the jewel of it. And I always say that, record your journey. Record your journey. Don't record it on your phone. You know, write it in a notebook. Put pen to paper in your handwriting, because if you are blessed to have children down the road, or maybe grandchildren, or maybe you meet the love of your life 10 years down the road, you can sit down with them and say, here's my journey, you know, and I guarantee you, people will get a really good big kick out of reading in your handwriting, your words, your journey. And so that's, if I had to go back, that's the one thing I would change, is I would have journaled my career.
Interesting. Okay, Ray, so the name of the interview segment is called Off the Radar. I'd like to get into some topics that I feel the media didn't do a real good job covering. We touched on it a couple of times. So, one of your first feuds or rivalries in WCW was with Mortis, a.k.a. Chris Kanyon. Incredible talent, great teacher. Unfortunately, the story ended too sad in 2010, where he did end up taking his life. What can you tell me about the man, Chris Kanyon?
Well, you know, I can tell you, when I first met Chris, I think the big reason why he and I clicked was because we were both in very similar spots. We had been wrestling for quite a while, and all of a sudden we were thrust into a position where this was our big break. And he and I really, from the very beginning, connected on that level because we were like, okay, you know, we know this is our one big shot, and this is never going to come again. So we got to make the most of it. And so we just dove in and we worked our butts off. I mean, we would be at the power plant all day. We would go to the gym, the main event gym, and work out. We'd all go, go home, get cleaned up, eat, and then we'd usually meet back over at Kanyon's apartment. And eventually, when he got a house, and I mean, we did this pretty much through our whole career. And we'd watch the videotapes of what the training we did that day. I mean, we were literally, almost one dimensional. We were totally immersed in we got to do this. And that wasn't we had to do it. We wanted to do it. We were driven to do it because we just absolutely were so passionate about what we were doing. So I think that's why we clicked as friends, and especially in the ring, why we clicked as opponents. I always used to say about Chris, good friends, better enemies. I mean, I'm telling you, there were times when we freaking banged heads in there, man. I mean, we kicked the crap out of each other. We hit each other. I mean, in our very first pay-per-view, actually, uncensored, if you can go back and watch, which I think it's on YouTube, there's a part where and Mickey J was refereeing the match, and there's a part where I did a spot earlier in the match where I threw him in the ropes. I followed him behind him, and he came off the other ropes. I did a forward roll and jumped up and hit him. I went for that again later in the match. And when he hit the ropes, instead of coming off, he held on the ropes and spun around. I was coming right behind him off to his left, and he spun around and his shin hit me square in the face. And boom, knocked me out. I mean, boom, I was just like out. And this is our first pay-per-view.
Right.
This is our big chance, and I'm freaking knocked out on the mat. And luckily, I kind of snapped back in real quick. And I remember, you can see it in the video. Mickey J stands over me and puts his hand down and says, "Are you okay?" And I said, No, give me a minute. and thank God we were able to get up and keep going. But that's just how hard we pushed each other. I mean, and it was never like, hey man, what was that out there? Why'd you tag me? It was like, that's what we felt like we needed to do because we knew how many eyes were on us. And so, and I think wrestling's a lot like dancing. You can have a lot of great dancers and some, even though they're two great individual dancers, they just don't gel well together. And there's some that gel as if they were meant to be, out there, performing because it just works. Kanyon and I were like that. People always say, who'd you had the best chemistry with in the ring? By far, Chris Kanyon. I had some great matches with some other great people in the ring, but everything he and I just did just seemed to always work. We just knew where the other one was. We knew where each other was going to be. It was a almost sixth sense, very magical type thing. And I tell you what, once you have that one time, you spend your rest of your career looking for that again, because it's a very, very rare thing in this business, at least in my opinion. And so, yeah, because of the chemistry in the ring and because of our similar work ethics and our passion for wrestling, I mean, like I said, we had our group of friends that we called the FOP, the Friends of Page, all the guys at Page helped get deals, and it was me, it was Kanyon, it was my buddy Luther Biggs, Big Ron Reese, who was in the flock, Billy Kidman, Disco, all our group, and we hung out away from wrestling, obviously when we were on the road, but even off the road, we hung out, and that's usually not how it is, because most of the time when wrestlers get home, they go spend time with their families and kind of stay, recharge. We were always like, hey, and granted, it was a great time to live in Atlanta too. The 90s in Atlanta, there was the Olympics, there was, the Falcons, Deion was playing for the Falcons and the Braves. It was a pretty good time, So we had a lot to do, and here we were all young and single. We all were making good money. We could go out and kind of, we kind of had the run of the town, which was a really cool thing at that time. But, when he ended up taking his own life, it was terribly, terribly tragic. I remember exactly where I was when Jim Mitchell, James Vandenberg, who did the role of his manager, called me, and I was driving, and I pulled off the side of the road and just fell apart because it was a little bit of a steady decline those last couple of years, and I'm not going to say I was totally shocked when I heard it, but I was equally devastated because he was a good friend. He had a good heart. He had a lot of troubles that I think he was trying to get help with, but in the end, everybody knows how it ended, and I miss him every day. Me and Luther, we keep his memory alive literally by, we have sayings and quotes that we say about Kanyon almost every day in his honor. So we very much keep his memory alive. In the movie, we do a couple tips of the hat to his memory, which wrestling fans may pick up on. If they don't, it won't mess with the story any. But
Sure.
This was our opportunity to kind of to do that to some of the people we love and care about, and he was certainly one of those guys.
Definitely. Yeah, real sad story. You think if he were still alive today, he would have been an advocate possibly for the gay community and been a great trainer for NXT or AEW with all the knowledge he had and all that.
Yeah, and of course, you look at where Dallas's DDP Yoga took off around 2013. I think he would have been a great face of helping Paige with the DDP Yoga, and stuff like that. So, I think he would have definitely, I think he would have definitely had a great place in this world somewhere related to wrestling, and I think we all, once you do this business long enough, you kind of eventually cross over into that status of where people say, oh wow, people use the word legends all the time. I always say if you do anything long enough, eventually someone puts you in the legends category. but he would have been. I mean, he was an incredible talent. They called him the innovator of offense. He was. He had a great mind for especially to come up for guys like us who were bigger guys to do creative stuff that had never been done before. So yeah, I feel like it would have been a great place for him in this world, and I wish so much he was still here. I really do.
Definitely. It's too bad. Well, Ray, it's an absolute pleasure talking to you. Everybody needs to check out the Replaceables early 2021. Anything else, other way that fans can reach out to you or follow your career?
Yeah, you know what? I'm getting ready Monday, July 6th, which is just right around the corner. I'll be restarting. We started last year for just a couple of months with a podcast, me and my good buddy and co-host, Avi Klein, called Breaking the Ice with Glacier. But because of film and everything, it took so much of my time, we decided to kind of put it on the shelf. And we're relaunching that Monday, July 6th from noon to 1:30. We'll be live, so it'll be live and interactive, so people can write in questions and stuff. And it's a part of a whole podcast series, and it's going to be you can find it on the Twitch app. It's Breaking the Ice with Glacier.
Okay.
You can go to my Facebook page. It's for the several weeks at least to start. We're going to run it live on the Facebook Live, which is you can just go to facebook.com/ Ray Lloyd.126. It's just my name, Ray Lloyd. And the numbers 126. So yeah, starting Monday, July 6th, Breaking the Ice with Glacier. It's going to be very much kind of a variety show. Be rooted in wrestling, but we'll be covering a lot of topics. We'll be having unbelievable guests from obviously some from wrestling, some from the entertainment world, some from music, some from sports. I think we had a lot of success with it last time. Now we're just taking it to a whole different level. That and of course the film, The Replaceables, which we are hoping we'll have a screening copy ready by maybe the end of the year, first of the year. But you can go to our website to check out for the updates, which is just the replaceablesmovie.com. And it's replaceables with an S, movie.com.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to your upcoming projects. Again, Ray, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, Nick, thank you, man. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on.
Yes, sir.